This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms and Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And today he's going to be reacting to the red light green light mission from Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, a mission that showcases a fair few quintessential guns from the Cold War period, albeit not always realistically.
I just love the dazed stagger from being hit with an anti-aircraft missile. Just like shakes it off.
Right, over to you, Jonathan.
Let's go. Look at that monster. Reds could be hiding anything inside. Snap a picture. Ops want to see this.
Okay, pausing. So this looks really cool and Cold War-esque, with a giant concrete supervillain looking building. I don't know how plausible that building would be, but I'm not an architect. The rifle is an interesting one. It's a very Cold War choice, being a 1960s vintage rifle or carbine. I actually have one. So this is the Chinese Type 63, but the key thing about it in terms of reality versus the game is that it is select fire, and it will run fully automatic. Now obviously that would cause some problems in the game balance wise, because why bother with an AK if you've got this? As to it being a sniper, well, look very sniper-like, does it? Not something the typical Cold Warrior would be running through the jungle or the forest or whatever this is supposed to be with.
You're welcome.
Interesting press X to not die style cutscene there, where the Russian guard is being disarmed and the weapon that is pulled up and used to kill him is not a Tokarev, as we might expect. It's not a Makarov, as we might expect. It's an American Colt 1911. So that's very strange. There must be some sort of sophisticated mail order catalog system going on in this particular facility, because that's a definitively iconically American pistol. However, here is one, and this one, which you may not be able to see, it's a tiny marking, is actually Russian. So they did exist in Russia. Now, what they'd be doing in use at this time period, I don't know. But whether by accident or by some knowledge of the developers, it's not actually implausible for there to be a 1911 in Russia. So we've done the usual, let's grab the first weapon we see that looks cool thing, because that's what you do in a first-person shooter. And it does look cool because it's a Beretta 93R, which is almost literally a Gucci gun. What it's doing in early 1980s Ukraine, I'm not quite sure. It's not something you'd expect to find there, but it is very Cold War-y, and it is plausible time period-wise, just.
All right, I'm set. All clear, moving up.
Pausing. Just a quick word on the reload animation on that Type 63. It's a little bit modern day. I don't know of any drill manuals from the 80s that would have had you knocking the magazine out.
It's a SPAS-12 training course. Made to look like Anytown, USA.
Pausing. I'll just say the training course is a nice idea. It's a bit more James Bond movie than it is reality, I suspect. I don't think SPAS-12, as relatively well funded as they would have been at that time, would have had anything like a sophisticated setup as this. I'm pretty sure they don't have it now. So, but it is cool, and the arcade is a nice touch. Can I just say that was a hell of a knife throw? Accuracy, power, left hand as well. That's pretty impressive. In terms of the ballistics of what we're seeing here, I'm liking what I'm seeing in terms of puffs of dust, sparks of what probably steel cord bullets ricocheting off hard objects. I'm not seeing too much in the way of silly Star Wars tracer fire, which is something that gets on my nerves a bit in games. I understand the reason for it. You want to see where your bullets are going. But yeah, it has a nice sort of gritty, realistic feel to it so far. Of course, I'm slowly realizing that this being a highly sophisticated SPAS-12 training center, of course there are lots of fun foreign weapons that they've managed to acquire. Just a very quick thing to note on the Beretta is how it almost sounds like one shot. And if you've heard one of these things fired for real, it really is that fast. It's 3 rounds at, I'm not sure what it is, 1,000 rounds per minute, something like that. And it is just like one shot or like an echo of one shot. So they've nailed that. It's not that exaggerated dun-dun-dun that you sometimes get with burst fire weapons. So the next interesting foreign weapon that we see picked up here is the SPAS-12, and it's an interesting gun for the reason that games never depict, which is that it's either semi-automatic, as we're seeing here, or it's pump action. So you can basically change the setting of the pump grip, and that disables the self-loading system. So we usually see one or the other. So in the Matrix, we see the pump because it looks and sounds cool. In most games, we see semi-automatic operation, except for Half-Life, where we get magic shells being fired from the magazine tube as well as the barrel, but we won't go into that. Modeling wise, it's a good representation from what I've seen. It's got that classic bulky look to it, and yeah, well, it's a SPAS-12, what do you want? Okay, so we've got another weapon change here. We've now got a new primary, and it's the AKS-74U. So here is an AKS-74U, and U, the U bit of the name in Russian, which I'm not going to attempt, is how short the barrel is. So the modeling of the gun is good. Now, the drum magazine is the interesting thing, because the 74 bit of the name denotes the 5.45mm cartridge, which is correct for this time period. We'd expect the Russians to be moving over to the 5.45 cartridge. We don't want that because this one is fitted with a drum magazine. What I can't do, though, is show you the drum magazine fitted to the gun because they don't fit. There was no issue 5.45mm drum magazine because this isn't for this gun. This is for the RPK 74, which is a light machine gun. So what we have here is a fictional 5.45mm 70 odd round drum magazine, which of course is cool and fun, but not really realistic. The other thing I can't help noticing, which is something of a pet hate for me in period games, is this thing is fitted with an optical sight. Set in 1981, around about that time, nobody is running around with optical sights on their weapons unless they're a sniper. The more I think about it, the more this level is a great showcase to have lots of different weapons that wouldn't make any sense otherwise. So we've just seen a player pick up a Barrett 50 caliber self-loading rifle. It's pretty hefty, but you know, these guys eat their Wheaties/Weetabix. So unlike me, they'd have no problem wielding that thing. If you watch these things fired in real life, it is possible for someone with sufficient strength to pick that up and fire it from the shoulder with more than one shot. Some of the things we see in games are stretching credulity in terms of a big, heavy, powerful, hard recoiling gun. The Barrett is actually possible to run and gun with. It's just not something a soldier would typically do. We do have behind me a Barrett 50. I gather in the game that there is a suppressed version of it. 50 caliber suppressed rifles do exist. Yeah, that's a very Hollywood sound suppressor sound effect for what is a tremendously powerful rifle. As I say, you can suppress a 50 caliber rifle. It's not going to sound like pew pew, I'm afraid. So what we're seeing here in single player, bleeding over from multiplayer, is some customization options. So certain weapons have different stocks, different handguards, different sights fitted to them that we'd expect to see in a multiplayer game for variety and interest and unlocking things. I always think it's a bit weird when things just crop up in the campaign. And so what we see here is an AK-74U that looks like a Galil ACE. It's got a big chunky plastic handguard. It's got an additional magazine well sticking out the bottom of the receiver that the AK doesn't have, and of course the sight with the mount on it. So fine multiplayer, slightly disappointing perhaps in a single player campaign. I think I need to, well, I probably don't need to point out actually that multiple 50 caliber machine gun rounds to the head would be problematic, regardless of the helmet that you're wearing. I mean, anecdotally, it will sort of cause your neck to snap back, potentially causing neck injuries, certainly multiple hits. The sheer velocity and mass of those projectiles is such that they will breeze through any kind of wearable armor. So a bit of a Half-Life flashback here with the scoped revolver, always fun for gameplay reasons. In reality, scoped revolvers are a competition thing. That's not a scope, that's a red dot sight, which is actually more common. So this has the look of the gun in the game. Where you might actually use a scoped revolver in real life is in hunting. In terms of what the revolver actually is, don't bother looking because it's not real. It's an interesting combination of multiple different designs. Gives you usually 6 shots because you can't fit any more in the cylinder, which means you can up the power of the gun in the game. So this is why revolvers keep cropping up in games, because you can make them proportionately more powerful, which they are in real life, keeping the capacity down so that you have to reload them more regularly. You can make the reload slower. And actually, to be fair, in the early 80s, revolvers were still very much a thing, militarily and in other spheres. So we see the Magnum being reloaded quite rapidly, slower than a self-loading pistol would be depicted in the game, but relatively quickly. And they're using speed loaders. The 6 rounds go in as a unit, close it up and carry on firing, which is perfectly correct. Recoil is maybe a bit light for a Magnum revolver, but I'm sure this guy's got some seriously strong wrists. So. Yeah, that was a curious scene. So we not only have we got what I'm pretty certain is an anti-aircraft missile, which typically don't fire against ground target, aren't used against ground targets and won't even fire without a lock. It's unguided as far as I can tell. And then what really blows my mind is that we've got, what, 3 shots there? Okay, so it's an anti-aircraft missile, but it's an explosive munition with fragmentation and blast and all of that. And the guy just shakes it off. So yeah, that's the most confusing thing I've seen so far. Sorry, I just love the dazed stagger from being hit with an anti-aircraft missile. Just like shakes it off. So here we've got the DShK, or DShK, probably a DShK M, slightly more modernized version. Vehicle mounted, which they often are. Pronounced DShK because it's a bit of a play in Russian on the name for sweetheart. And it's a big, heavy 12.7mm caliber weapon. Sound is great. The look of it is right. So far, so good. I'm starting to think it might be a little bit overpowered. People being thrown left, right, and center by it. It's also not clear what this thing is capable of going through or not. I know games like this now are very good at modeling soft cover, hard cover, ricocheting, things like that. And as we go down the street, we actually have 2 APCs called out, and the shots are penetrating the armor of the APCs and just destroying them. Really, what this should have been is at least a 14.5mm gun, KPVT, to be able to do serious damage to an APC. They're called armored personnel carriers for a reason.
Oh, hell yeah!
Squad, Bell, what's your status?
Gather everyone, Fark. The whole team. Hudson's got a shit ton of explaining to do.
So that was my breakdown of the very diverse weapons of the mission Red Light, Green Light from Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you again.